All right, go ahead and get this thing cracking. All right, hold on a second here. Disability Talk Live. See, this is what happens when you try to merge technology. So hold on a second here. All right. So give me 1 second. All right, give me 1 second here. All right. All right, so okay. All right, Nicholas, what's good in the neighborhood? And oh, I guess this will help. There we go. We are ready to get this thing popping and locking. So let's go ahead and get moving and grooving accordingly. So hold on, let me do one more thing, and then one more thing. So give me a second. I'm actually trying. There we go. Getting this echo out the way because I had the speakers on. All right. All right. So today our discussion is going to be on a variety of things, but one in particular was the main topic of discussion today was the continuing disability review. Okay. For those of you who are looking at me going, you're a little hazy on there. Hey, it's all good in the neighborhood. At least I'm still here. Let's talk about what happens when you undergo what's called the continuing disability review. So this is how it typically plays out, of course. You're going through you're receiving disability benefits, and then what happens, and hello Beverly, what ends up happening is you get notification from the Social Security Administration that you are going to be, they're currently going to review your claim for disability benefits. So of course that's going to cause you to have some concerns. So a couple things that you need to be mindful of. I always tell people that you have an ongoing duty, and I mean make sure I get my bearings right. I always tell people that you have an ongoing duty to prove that you're disabled. So what does that mean in terms of your purposes? Well, it means a few things. First, when you get that information, Social Security is looking at your case typically from one or two scenarios. There's a couple of different exceptions. Right now we're only focusing on the medical improvement one, meaning we can always do another video that talks about the exceptions, like if they think you've lied or committed fraud, that's another day. Typically what happens is Social Security wants to know if your condition has medically improved, and if it has it medically improved to the point where you're able to work. All right, so let's kind of take this one step at a time. What they're going to want to know, and Glenn, what's good? What they want to know is looking at your medical condition, they want to know, has your condition medically improved? Now, let's start with a basic understanding here that I tell all people all the time. If you've got a condition, Social Security already knows right out the gate that you have a condition that's not going to go anywhere. So I say that to say, because a lot of times what happens when people go through the review, they get all angry because they're like, dude, my condition is not going anywhere. Why are we doing a disability review? I'm not going to get any better. Social Security doesn't take that attitude. They don't take the attitude that your condition is one that you're going to have in a sense of it's going to stay at the same level of severity forever. Let me say this again. They don't look at your case in a way where they're thinking your condition is going to remain the same way forever. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that Social Security knows that with new technology, new medications, new treatments coming out, there's a possibility that your condition improves. So they want to see, has your condition medically improved? And you're saying, well, how do they do that? Well, they look at the time of when you were last determined to be disabled, and they look at now. It's what we call a comparative point review, or a comparative point disability decision, however you want to say it. It's a comparative point. They compare one point to another. So if you were found disabled in February of 2012, that's 5 years ago, they're going to look at what were the circumstances in 2012, what are the circumstances now, okay? And I'm going to stop right there because Nicholas asked a great question. How long Social Security goes before calling you for a review? The reality is it depends on a variety of things. There's no set time period. That's the first thing I want people to know. There's no set time period. They don't say the moment you get disability benefits, we're going to leave you alone for 5 years. It depends. If you had a decision with the court and the judge reviewed your file and he or she thinks that your condition will be improved in a year, they could have it for a year later or 2 years. They can determine that it's 2 years later. Or it just really just depends. If you're a person that you're 62 years old, if they know that your disability, by the time the review comes around, you'll be retirement age, they may not do a review at all. It all depends on the condition. Or maybe you have a condition, let's say that you have a condition itself that once you get Medicare or your Medicaid and you got the treatment that you need, it's reasonable for you to get improvement for maybe 3 years. Well, they may set a diary to come back and check out your case in 3 years. So I say all this to put this out here. There's no, and Nicholas, that's a great question, because so many times people focus on, at what point am I going to get a disability review? And I always tell people the reality is that it just depends on the circumstances of your case. So I don't want you to sit here and if the person next to you is telling you, oh, I didn't get mine for like 5 years, that you're automatically thinking in your mind that it'll be 5 years before you get a review. Okay? All right. So the first thing they want to know is they want to know, they're going to compare the points. They're going to say, at this point, have you been medically improved? Let me tell you something. A lot can happen over a period of time. Whether the review is a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, a lot can happen in terms of improvement. So they're going to be looking to say, okay, has your condition improved? And now, once they made the determination, let's say they determined that your condition hasn't improved, your condition is still remains the same, okay, you're good, right off to the sunset. Let's assume that they make the determination that your condition has improved. So then you're freaking out because you're thinking, I'm doing better, but I still can't work. That's the next part. They want to look at, if it's medically improved, has it now improved to the point where you can now return back to work? So that therein lies the unique portion going forward, is has your condition improved to the point of where you can now return back to work? So they're using the same type of analysis in terms of what's the medical records say, what are your limitations, based on those limitations, what can you do any of the work that you've done in the last 15 years, and based on those limitations, along with your age, your education, and your work background, can you do anything else? And so looking at all of those things as a whole, they then will make a determination that your condition is one of such a level that they believe either will support that you're no longer disabled, or it will not support that you're no longer disabled. So that's where it operates there. So I always tell people this, not to freak them out, not to cause them to be, to get all mad or anything like that. It's just that I want you to be mindful of the fact that the reality is that Social Security can review you at any point in time. And so if they believe at any point in time that your condition is one that may improve to the point where they believe that you can return back to work, the first thing they want to look at is medical improvement. The second thing they want to look at is, has it improved to the point where you can return back to work? Now, one of the things that I tell people, and this is something that I threw out there, hold this. Illinois Underground, awesome question. He asked the question, can they make you pay the money back if you've improved? It depends. It depends on whether or not, and let me just kind of tell you where, because it's a yes and no question, and this yes and no answer. Here's where I mean by this standpoint. Let's say they make a determination that your disability ended on February 1st, 2017, and that's your last check, but you want to appeal. So guess what? During the appeals process, you can keep your benefits going. Okay. Now, let's say for instance that you keep it going, you appeal it, and they still find that you're not disabled. from the period of time where you elected to keep the benefits going. Let's say that you were told you were no longer disabled on February 1st, but you kept the benefits going on February 2nd. And then let's say you went and you fought all the way to December 2017, and they still say you're still disabled, then still not disabled. From February 2nd to the end of December 2017, that's the window where they'll make you pay it back. They won't jump back. They typically will give you a date and say, this is the date we think your benefits or your disability benefits stop. We'll pay you to this particular point, but at that point, no more. If you keep fighting it and you lose, at that particular point, they could ask for you to refund the money back for the period of time where they determined that you were no longer disabled and yet you kept fighting. So Illinois, I hope that gave you a little bit more information. Now, Beverly is asking, is Social Security looking for an overall condition or the condition that started the disability? Awesome question, because it depends. So what happens is that you probably are asking the question, are they asking you, is your same disability condition still disabling now? Or do they take into consideration something new or your overall condition? They'll do two things. They'll look to see if the condition that originally disabled you is still disabling now. That's the first thing. But they won't ignore the fact if something has changed in that time period. So what does that mean? Well, let's say I had this happen. I had a lady who had a stroke, and she was on disability benefits for a period of time. Her conditions from her stroke got better, and then right around the time for her review, she was in a car accident. So she had brand new conditions. So they determined that her stroke had improved, but because she had now been in this awesome automotive vehicle accident that caused her to have problems, they determined that she was disabled from a new condition. So to answer your question, Beverly, they kind of do both. They look at the condition that disabled you at the time that you originally applied for disability benefits, and then they determine if it's medically improved. But they also take in consideration if there are other medical conditions that may have presented themselves. Because the reality is that you could be disabled by one thing and then some things came up along the way, and those things are just as disabling as the original, but now the original's gotten better, but now you have other things that make it worse. So Beverly, I hope that answers your question. Now, Glenn asked a question. He met with his neuropathy specialist today, decided to try a higher milligram fentanyl patch. And for those of you who know, fentanyl patches are typically used for pain cases. It makes them more sleepy, where I can't function. We'll go back to a lower dosage. At this point, is there any reason for me to continue to see him other than getting refills every 3 months? Will doing this hurt my case? Here's what I tell people all the time. You continue to go to the doctor for the medical treatment, whatever you normally do, in order for you to continue getting the treatment you need for your case. Sometimes people wonder, well, should I maneuver this, or maybe should I do this? And I always tell them at the end of the day, you want to follow whatever treatment regimen that you need to follow in order to improve your circumstances, and let that be evidence that you utilize, or Social Security is going to look for it anyway, to determine whether or not that information is helpful to your case or harmful, whatever the case may be. So I kind of throw that out there to you, food for thought, to kind of put the point of saying, you know, if the doctors are recommending that you continue to see the doctor every few months, then you keep going. Okay, if the doctor is saying that you no longer need to go, then you don't go. Follow what your doctors are prescribing for you to do, because they're the ones that are laying down the foundation in terms of your treatment regimen. So this way you know in advance how everything is kind of laying out. Okay, now I want to go back to Illinois' question, because he actually kind of gave me a great segue into to what I was about to start talking about here. If you have been found to no longer be disabled, you're going to now find yourself at a very unique crossroad. You now have to decide if you're going to appeal it. Do you want to keep the benefits going while you appeal? And that's where it gets tough for a lot of people, because the simple fact of the matter is that if you've been on disability benefits for a period of time, you rely heavily on that check. Real talk. You know, you're on a fixed income. You know, you're used to that check coming in every month. And now, you know, let's be real. If you've been receiving monies for about 2, 3, 4 years, and you've literally, you know, structured your life around those benefits, that's traumatizing. When somebody comes to you and say, you know, because they don't give you a progression to that thing. They don't slowly wean you off. It's like, ha, they cut you off right out the gate. So that means, you know, that could really throw your whole life in a groove. So now you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do now? Okay, you have to now ask yourself, what do you want to do now? Do you want to keep getting the benefits while you're going through the appeals process? Do you want to appeal it and not keep the benefits going? Or do you just want to say, to hell with it, I'm just going to go back to work? And that is a difficult question that only you can answer. So when people come to me and they ask me that question, I say, first of all, I want to start with the ugly. Start with the ugly. The ugly is if you decide to keep the benefits going during the disability process and Social Security ultimately finds that you are no longer disabled, you are going to have to refund that money. So that's the ugly. Well, what's the bad? The bad is that you could continue to appeal and still lose. Well, what's the good? Well, the good is you can continue to appeal and you could keep your benefits going and win your case. And even though the headache of going through the appeal might be a nightmare, but you at least were able to still been able to survive and keep benefits going while you were going through this fist fight. So that's important for you to know for purposes going forward. So this way you're not shocked because you're trying to figure out how to survive during that period of time. And here's the other thing most people ask. How long does it take to go through the review process if you are denied? That is a tricky question because the ultimate answer is it depends. What do I mean by it depends? Well, it depends because the reality is what typically happens is you get denied. They tell you that you're no longer disabled. They typically, and here's a big thing, people, if they tell you, read that notice because they usually give you like a good 10-day window. I don't know if they still do this, but it used to be they give you a 10-day window from the moment you actually tell them that they tell you that your benefits have been cut off to when you can notify them of whether to keep your benefits going. So they give you usually like 10 days from that date to tell them, because if you don't, you're out of gas there. Okay? Now, will you get, and Markel's TV made a nice comment, will you receive a notice of good or bad after CDR? You definitely will get one for bad, because a bad one is telling you that your benefits are being cut off. My understanding, and here's the thing, most people, I've never had anybody come to me when they've gotten approved. I mean, when they continue the benefits. My instinct tells me they probably tell you if your benefits are going to be continued. Okay, so I think they're going to provide you a notice, good, bad, or otherwise, Markel. It's a good question. But I definitely know they're going to give you one if it's bad. But if it's good, they'll probably tell you that the benefits continue. Now, they won't tell you when your next review will be. So keep that in the back of your mind so you're not sitting here thinking, whew, I ain't got to worry about saying this again. And you can get more than one review. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so going back, you get a notice telling you they've reviewed your case. They're telling you that, boom, in 2 months, we're about to cut your benefits off. You elect to keep the benefits going. So what happens is that they do what's called a reconsideration review to look at it again. You'll usually have an opportunity, depending on what state you're in, to go before what's called a disability hearing officer, okay, who's going to sit there and evaluate your file and make a determination of whether or not your condition has improved to the point where you can return back to work. That means you're going to probably go into a local Social Security office. You're going to talk to a state worker, depending on what state you're in, who's going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about your condition to make a determination of whether or not your condition's improved. That decision will usually come about a month. It's been my experience that usually it's about 3 weeks to a month. Then after that, they'll say, if you get denied and they keep the benefits, if they still end your benefits, same 10-day notice is given to you. You want to keep the benefits going, and then you want to go before a hearing. So now if you decide to keep fighting and you want to go before a judge, it has been my experience, I usually tell people about 6 to 8 months before you get a hearing. I stress again, every state is different. So don't sit here and say, Attorney Reeves said, I'm going to get my hearing in 6 months after the second denial. I'm like, and again, I say, every state is different. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, most people want to know, when is that cutoff point at which they make you pay the money back? If by some chance you get denied by a judge and you kept your benefits going during the first appeal, which was the recon appeal, and then the appeal to the judge, at the moment you get denied by the judge, that window cuts off right there. That's the point where you can still keep appealing, So you can appeal that judge's decision to the appeals council, and even if you lose there, you can sue them in federal court, but the money stops there. So that means if, let's say they cut your benefits off in February of 2017, you decided to keep the benefits going. They have a hearing for you in June of 2017. You lose there, you keep them going. You have a hearing before a judge in December of 2017. You get your hearing decision in February of 2018, and it says it's denied. You can appeal that, but for that year, from the moment Social Security initially said you're no longer disabled, all the way to the point where you finally got denied by a judge, that window you're looking to have to pay that money back. Okay, now let me get my bearings here. So the reality is that, and here's the thing that most people don't realize. Okay, hold on a second for great questions. Here's the thing that most people lose sight of in the bigger picture, is that most people don't know when the review is coming. And to be honest, in some instances, especially when they're doing the initial review and they're getting copies of your medical records, you don't have a clue what they're looking at. Now, and it's fascinating because the reality is that Glenn made a very nice point. It's amazing to me the very person deciding approve or deny of your disability case has never practiced medicine. And it's an interesting point that you say that, but I always tell people this is the problem with the disability process that you need to understand. They're applying medical evidence to the law. So going to your doctor is almost like asking your doctor. You would think, the doctor can find me disabled. I said, but you're asking them to apply the law to your case, and they're not lawyers. So it kind of goes both ways. I know the system sounds crazy when you look at it, but it balances itself out. So keep that in the back of your mind. But I always tell this, and this is always my big lead off whenever people come to me telling me about what's wrong with the system. I said, you need to recognize two fundamental points. One, the system is what it is until you argue heavily to have it overturned with your legislatures. But until that time, the burden falls on you to prove that you're disabled. So always focus on the fact that you need to focus on what you need to do to not let you don't ever want Social Security to have to figure out if you're disabled. You need to take responsibility to do whatever you can to prove you're disabled. Now, all right, it says here, Beverly says, why do some jobs harass you when you get injured on the job? And that's more of an employment law question. And I'm not trying to knock you, Beverly, because I appreciate that question. The reality is that you got to look at that in a particular context. Are you saying your coworkers are harassing you? Are you saying your employer is harassing you? Is your supervisor harassing you? What is harass? The reality is that the American with Disabilities Act was ultimately designed to allow for individuals who have disabilities to be able to receive accommodations in the workplace and without fear of any type of reprisals or retaliation. Social Security has a number of different programs that are available to them that are entitled to assist people in reintegrating themselves back into the workforce. The reality is that sometimes it's a nightmare if you've been getting disability benefits and you want to get back into the workforce, because let's be real, you want to get money. You're going to work, working is going to get you more money than actually getting disability benefits, and it is frustrating. Now, let's go here. If I find an online job to make extra money, how much extra can I make? What is the difference between SSI, SSA, and SSD? All right, Illinois, let's break this down because you're asking a bunch of questions in two very succinct sentences. First, SSA is a Social Security Administration. SSI and SSD are the two primary types of disability programs that fall underneath SSA's jurisdiction. SSI is supplemental security income. That is a need-based program. It's basically a welfare program where they pay you a certain dollar amount that's capped. I think the most you can get is like $730 a month in order to supplement your income, okay, because of the fact that you're not able to work and you haven't paid into the system. SSD is Social Security Disability. That's where you have worked and paid into the system, and you're trying to get disability benefits based on what you've paid into it. Now, people ask the question all the time, and I've got this one gentleman on here. I don't want to call his name out. If he's on here, I give him a shout. But he and I have been having a fun-filled conversation because the question is always asked to me, how much extra money can I make and not, basically, they stop and they say, how much extra money can I make and it not affect my Social Security? The problem is that as an attorney, when I hear that, I don't hear that. What I hear is you're asking, is there a threshold amount of money that I can make that will not alert Social Security to my case for purposes of any type of disability review, or will cause my disability benefits to be discontinued? Okay, so the first thing I tell people is, if it's SSD, there's what we call a trial work program. There's what a threshold dollar amount. I forgot, I think it's $840, maybe up to $860 now. $860 is if you're making over that dollar amount, the trial work period kicks in. And that's also what we call substantial gainful activity. That's usually the threshold dollar amount most people are thinking about. But what I also tell them is this, because sometimes they'll say, well, that means that you're telling me that if I make $800 a month, I don't have to worry about Social Security. That's where you get tripped up. If you're making a certain amount of money per month consistently, Social Security may utilize that additional fact that you're working on a continuous basis as a basis to review your case to see if your condition is medically improved. So this is the thing that I have, and this is where it's funny, this one gentleman and I am going back and forth, and I don't disagree with him. First of all, let's start with the basic premise. If you're thinking about it, and let me just do this because he joked with me. I heard he made a comment talking about I got it backwards. Let me see if I can get it forward too. If you are thinking about going back to work, contact Social Security first. Listen to me when I say this, because most people, they don't want to go to Social Security because they're worried that by talking to them about work, that they may possibly put themselves in jeopardy of review. As long as you're getting benefits from the government under this program, you are under their umbrella to monitor what you do. So you're not hiding anything by trying to be on the DL. Find out exactly what it is in terms of the threshold. SSI is a little different. They have SSI work incentive programs that are available to allow people to transition into work so that they can tell you how that money calculates, because they may reduce your benefits on how much money you're getting from working for purposes of the SSI. I say all that to say this. Educate yourself about what impact working will have on your case. So first of all, you want to know, if you work, how much of it will result in your benefits being discontinued? If you work below that threshold, does that put you, and this is the question you really need to have answered, will that put you at risk of being evaluated for a disability review? What they're probably going to tell you is there's always the possibility that it will, but then it always goes back to the ongoing responsibility that you have to prove you're disabled. So let's go back to what Illinois said. Okay, let's go back to what Illinois said. He asked the question, how much extra you can make. I would say it depends on the type of program you have. Contact Social Security, get a complete understanding of the threshold. Markel wants to know, can you receive SSDI overseas and not SSI? You're correct. My understanding is that SSI is not one you can get overseas. SSDI you can, but it depends on the countries. Some countries, Social Security will not allow you to have monetary payments from the programs to be released into that country. So you need to make sure that if you know you're getting ready to relocate overseas and you're getting SSDI, that you notify Social Security of the country you're going into, so this way they know. And thank you, Miss 50 Plus Locks, and keep those things in the back of your mind. People, let me throw this point out there to you so this way you're not surprised. If you find yourself getting disability benefits, once you are receiving disability benefits, I cannot stress this enough. You are now the responsibility of the government. So if you are trying to do things in such a way to not be on their radar, it really doesn't serve you any purpose, because the reality is you're always on their radar. I know that sometimes people will sit here and tell me, why are you trying to freak people out? Why are you trying to scare people? I say, let me just be blunt. And I don't want you to take this wrong when I say this. You can talk to each other about different things, and you can be free-flowing. As an attorney providing general legal information, I have an ethical obligation to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I can't sugarcoat it because I don't want to scare you. My responsibility is to provide as much knowledge and education as possible so that you can be informed about what you need to do to keep your benefits going, if it's your intent to keep them going, and what you need to do for purposes of segueing off of Social Security if you no longer need it. All right? Now, 4:30 people, I gotta shut this thing down, but I want to give you the opportunity to ask me, do anybody have any additional questions before I shut this thing down? Okay. Now, last call, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As always, I appreciate it. I will tell you that our next live show, I'm actually going to probably do a few more than just once a week. I mean, twice a month for the month of March. I'm actually planning on doing a few shows in the month of March. So if this 4 o'clock time works for you guys, just keep this on your calendar. Of course, make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you can get an alert to let you know when the shows are coming up. So this way you know in advance when those live shows are going to hit. And as always, it's an honor and pleasure to answer questions for you. And whoa, wait a minute. I got a couple questions here. All right. Will contacting a senator or congressman help in any way? It depends. It depends entirely. The reason why I said it depends is that sometimes your case can be designated a congressional inquiry. And that means that somebody in Congress has reached out to them. It is a matter of certain urgency that they need to take a look at it. Now, here's the reality. They may look at it, but it may not necessarily move your case ahead any faster. You're well within your rights to ask, but just keep that in the back of your mind. On Social Security, I do not make enough to file taxes. If I did self-employed business so I can file a 1099, will that be held against me? Social Security, it just depends. And this is where when people ask me like those real limiting questions where I do this one thing, will it be held against me? And I tell people, it depends on the circumstances involved. There's not enough information to be able to say if that's going to be held, quote, against you. Just don't look at things about being held against you. Look at it in the context of this is going to be looked at in a bigger picture about whether they believe you are or you're not disabled. So they're going to keep all of those things in mind when they're determining whether or not you're disabled or not. So everything has a bearing, but it's all relative to the facts of your case. All right. As always, people, this is Attorney Anthony Reeves. This was your Disability Talk Live with me. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today. And in like quick follow-up here, I don't make enough so that I can claim my children, so will the 1099 help to put me in the bracket? I can't answer that question for that particular purposes, because when you're saying bracket, that sounds like a tax question and so forth. I can't tell you how it's going to relate to your Social Security case. They look at self-employees a little differently. So keep that in the back of your mind that they are evaluating how you do all the things you're doing, meaning how much time you spend, all those things. And keep in mind, self-employed, whenever we're talking self-employed, I got to do a show specific on self-employed because when you're doing self-employed, it's a different beast. But we'll save that for another day. Matter of fact, we'll make that one of our top priorities for our next early videos and so forth in the month of March. As always, keep me in your thoughts. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so we can keep you up to date on these shows. We're going to do a few in the month of March so we can keep you rocking and jocking. And as always, have a wonderful day. Look forward to seeing you again. This is your Anthony Reeves Disability Talk Live. And make sure you check out my videos on Disability Talk Live with Attorney Anthony Reeves. Make sure you check me out on Q&A Social Security Disability Today.